At a corner of 6th Avenue was a shop with a wide glass window, bright with electric lights. Soapy picked up a big stone and threw it through the glass. People came running around the corner. A cop was the first among them. Soapy stood still and he smiled when he saw the cop. "Where is the man that did that?" asked the cop. "Don't you think that I might have done it?" said Soapy. He was friendly and happy. What he wanted was coming towards him. But the cop's mind would not consider Soapy. Men who break windows do not stop there to talk to cops. They run away as fast as they can. The cop saw a man further along the street, running. He ran after him, and Soapy, sick at heart, walked slowly away. He had failed 2 times. Across the street was another restaurant. It was not so fine as the one on Broadway. The people who went there were not so rich. Its food was not so good. Into this, Soapy took his old shoes and his torn clothes, and no one stopped him. He sat down at the table and was soon eating a big dinner. When he had finished, he said that he and money were strangers. "Get busy and call a cop," said Soapy, "and don't keep a gentleman waiting." "No cop for you," said the waiter. He called another waiter. The 2 waiters threw Soapy upon his left ear on the hard street outside. He stood up slowly, one part at a time, and beat the dust from his clothes. Prison seemed only a happy dream. The island seemed very far away. A cop who was standing near laughed and walked away. Soapy traveled almost half a mile before he tried again. This time, he felt very certain that he would be successful. A nice-looking young woman was standing before a shop window, looking at the objects inside. Very near stood a large cop. Soapy's plan was to speak to the young woman. She seemed to be a very nice young lady who would not want a stranger man to speak to her. She would ask the cop for help, and then Soapy would be happy to feel the cop's hand on his arm. He would be on his way to the island. He went near her. He could see that the cop was already watching him. The young woman moved away a few steps. Soapy followed. Standing beside her, he said, "Good evening, Bendela. Don't you want to come and play with me?" The cop was still looking. The young woman had only to move her hand, and Soapy would be on his way to the place where he wanted to go. He was already thinking how warm he would be. The young woman turned to him. Putting out her hand, she took his arm. "Sure, Mike," she said joyfully. "If you'll buy me something to drink, I would have spoken to you sooner." But the cop was watching. With the young woman holding his arm, Soapy walked past the cop. He was filled with sadness. He was still free. Was he going to remain free forever? At the next corner, he pulled his arm away and ran. When he stopped, he was near several theaters. In this part of the city, streets are brighter and hearts are more joyful than in other parts. Women and men in rich, warm coats moved happily in the winter air. A sudden fear caught Soapy. No cop was going to arrest him. Then he came to another cop standing in front of a big theater. He thought of something else to try. He began to shout as if he had had too much to drink. His voice was as loud as he could make it. He danced, he cried out, and the cop turned his back to Soapy and said to a man standing near him, "It's one of those college boys. He won't hurt anything. We had orders to let them shout." Soapy was quiet. Was no cop going to touch him? He began to think of the island as if it were as far away as heaven. He pulled his thin coat around him. The wind was very cold. Then he saw a man in the shop buying a newspaper. The man's umbrella stood beside the door. Soapy stepped inside the shop, took the umbrella and walked slowly away. The man followed him quickly. "My umbrella," he said. "Oh, is it?" said Soapy. "Why don't you call a cop?" "I took it." "Your umbrella. Why don't you call a cop? There's one standing at the corner." The man walked more slowly. Soapy did the same. But he had a feeling that he was going to fail again. The cop looked at the two men. "I," said the umbrella man. "That is, you know how these things happen. If that's your umbrella, I'm very sorry. I found it this morning in a restaurant. If you say it's yours, I hope you will."